Okay, let's get into it. Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something a bit different. It's a text that's part philosophical monologue, part speculative fiction, and it is absolutely fascinating. It's titled Wenn ich eine Pflanze wär, which, translates simply to if I were a plant.
Uh-huh.
But I need to stress, this is not some gentle poetic reflection on nature. It's a radical piece of thinking. It feels almost like an intellectual hand grenade wrapped up to look like a simple essay.
It really does. It's one of those texts that sort of sneaks up on you. It starts quietly, but the implications are just enormous.
Exactly. So for everyone listening, our mission today is to really unpack this thing, to pull out the deepest insights from this quiet but incredibly potent text. It's all about perspectivity, about biological determinism, and the shocking idea that what we call reality is entirely relative.
It is, and the text does this through a central extended allegory. The entire piece is framed as a kind of lecture from a being who has made a choice to shift from what they call a permanently mobile existence.
Which is us, animals, humans.
Which is us, right. An existence defined by movement. And they've shifted to local fixity, a rooted stationary state, like a plant.
And this isn't just about deciding to stay home more. The text is designed, it feels like, specifically to destabilize our most basic human assumptions.
It is. Assumptions about what intelligence even is, or what awareness requires, or how complex communication can happen. It's a deliberate exercise in trying to detach from our own very human-centric way of seeing the world.
So, okay, let's unpack this then. The core tension, the thing that drives this whole thought experiment,
Right.
is this clash between two ways of being. Life based on movement versus life that is rooted in stationary.
That's the heart of it.
And we, from our Connect perspective, we measure everything by our ability to move through it, to conquer distance. But this fixed being, this convert, they're playing by a completely different set of rules. We really have to dig into what this conversion actually means.
We do, because the text is very clear that it's a total re-engineering of the self. So the speaker in this monologue identifies themselves as a formerly permanently mobile individual. That phrasing is so specific. And they say they made a conscious, willing decision to convert to ortsverständnis.
Local fixity.
Local fixity. And the sources we've looked at, they all stress that this isn't just a lifestyle change. It's not like moving out to the countryside to, slow down.
No.
The way it's framed suggests a profound, almost religious or existential paradigm shift.
The word itself, conversion, is so loaded, isn't it? It's not adaptation or change, it's conversion. That implies a moral or a spiritual choice.
It absolutely does. You're abandoning one faith, one set of core beliefs for a totally different one. The faith of mobility is being traded for the faith of fixity.
And what was that old faith like?
Yeah.
The text draws a really stark contrast. The mobile life, our life, was defined by one word: Offenheit.
Effort. Constant effort.
Let's spend a minute on that, on Offenheit. Because when we think of effort, we think of, running a race or a big project at work. But that's not what the speaker means, is it?
No, not at all. They mean the sheer, nonstop, underlying effort of just being mobile. The background processing power it takes.
The overhead.
The overhead, exactly. Think about your day. How much of your energy, your actual mental and physical effort, is just maintenance for your mobility?
You mean like commuting?
Commuting is a perfect example, but it's deeper. It's the energy you spend getting to resources like going to the grocery store. It's the cognitive load of constantly processing your spatial orientation just so you don't walk into walls.
Right.
It's monitoring your environment for threats that only exist because you're moving through it. Cars, other people. It is a profoundly high-maintenance way to exist.
And the new life, the fixed life. It's described as taking things gelassener.
Calmly, or with more composure, more serenity. It's presented as an incredible liberation.
So the very thing we see as freedom, our ability to move anywhere, is reframed here as a kind of burden.
A huge burden. It demands constant sensory input, constant processing, just to keep the system running, just to stay oriented. Once you remove that fundamental requirement to be in constant kinetic motion, your entire mental landscape changes.
That energy has to go somewhere.
It doesn't just vanish, it gets immediately rerouted into something else.
Which makes perfect sense. If you're not spending all your resources on, travel logistics and navigation, you have this massive surplus of energy and attention for what? Integration, I guess.
For integration. But what's so honest about the text is that The speaker admits their own bias before the conversion. They say they used to look at plants, at fixed beings, and wonder, what do they do all day?
Right, assuming they don't really have much to do.
Right.
We've all had that thought.
Of course. It's the great error of the mobile world. This assumption that if I can't see the activity, if I can't perceive it with my senses, which are tuned for movement, then the activity must be simple, or it's not happening at all.
It's a bias, rooted purely in that kinetic perspective. And the speaker's conversion just shatters that illusion immediately.
It's revealed as a vast, vast underestimation. The physical stillness they now have isn't the point of their existence, it's just the outward expression of it.
It's the platform, not the end result.
Precisely. Immobility isn't a lack of action. It's the necessary condition for a completely different kind of action, a slower, maybe more intense form of action that reshapes everything. Perception, thought, self-understanding. Your identity is no longer about where you can go. It's about how deeply you can connect to where you are.
And that takes us right to the idea of rootingness, doesn't it? A German word that uses Verwurzelt. The state of being fixed in one place is described as the opposite of passive.
The absolute opposite. The speaker makes this point very clearly. They talk about developing an incredibly complex, far-reaching connection to everything related to the place.
So that energy, the Offenheit that used to go into movement, is now channeled into this intense, localized integration.
Exactly. The physical act of rooting is a metaphor for a cognitive and perceptual act of rooting.
Let's try to get more specific with that. How does that complexity show up? For us, for mobile beings, complexity is often horizontal, right? How many countries have you visited? How many books have you read? How much ground have you covered?
That's a great way to put it. For the fixed being, complexity is measured vertically and volumetrically. It's about the depth and nuance of the chemical, the biological, the physical interactions within a very small, defined space, but over a very long period of time.
So it's not about breadth, it's about depth.
Think of it this way. A mobile person, like us, might read the headlines from around the world every day. We get a little bit of information from a lot of places.
A surface-level scan.
A surface-level scan.
Yep.
The fixed being, the convert, is instead reading the complete multi-volume geological, biological, and hydrological history of a single square meter of soil. And they're reading it all at once in real time.
Okay, wow. So we move and we sample. The fixed being stays and it integrates. So being still isn't about being simple at all. It's about becoming deeply, profoundly integrated.
You're trading that horizontal rapid exploration for a vertical, almost geological layered depth of understanding.
And the metrics for a successful life are completely different. For us, it's distance covered. For them, it's, biological density, time.
It's time and biological density, yes. Their awareness doesn't expand by moving their body through space. It expands by extending their sensing apparatus, their roots, their chemical feelers, deeper into the soil, further into the air currents, and wider through the symbiotic network that they're a part of.
You stop being an individual traveler.
And they become a node, an intensely integrated node in a network of time and place.
This whole conversion, this abandonment of the kinetic self, has these immediate and pretty shocking consequences for what we consider to be core cognitive functions.
It really does.
The first big realization the speaker has is about memory. They say they just don't have to remember as much. In fact, they call memory completely overrated.
And not just overrated, unnecessary ballast.
Ballast, that's such a strong word. For us, for humans, memory is everything. It's our identity, our history, our ability to learn.
To call it cognitive trash is a huge philosophical challenge.
It is, but from their new perspective, it makes perfect sense. You have to ask, what is memory for in a mobile being? Fundamentally, its primary job is to aid orientation and prediction.
Right. You need to remember the path, remember where the food was yesterday, remember where the danger came from. It's a tool for navigation.
It's a tool for navigation. It's this massive, high-speed computational engine that's constantly processing the relationship between your movement and your sensory feedback, what you see, what you hear, so you can move through the world efficiently and safely.
So memory is the software that makes mobility possible. Exactly. It's a constant comparison engine. Is this new place like an old place? What's the quickest route from A to B based on my previous 10 trips? But if you are permanently fixed in one place,
that entire apparatus is obsolete.
It's totally useless. You don't need to store or access short-term spatial data because your location isn't changing. The whole reason for having that massive, energy-hungry filing system is just gone.
And all that cognitive energy that went into filing and retrieving memories about paths and places is suddenly freed up.
It's free. Your perception is no longer structured by this constant, frantic feedback loop of movement and memory. It's now structured by slow, long-term chemical changes, deeply embedded patterns in your immediate environment.
And this reveals something kind of inefficient about our minds, doesn't it? We hold on to the memory of a million different paths we took, a million faces we saw, just in case we might need that data again.
We're cognitive hoarders, in a way. The fixed being optimizes its internal resources by just shedding all that ballast. The text is suggesting that these incredible memory systems we're so proud of are not a sign of superior intelligence in an absolute sense. They're just a functional requirement for our specific biological limitation.
Our limitation being the need to constantly move.
Exactly. Our intelligence is an intelligence for movement.
Which connects directly to the next thing that happens.
Yeah.
Sensory loss. The speaker just casually mentions that their vision is deteriorating.
Right, just as a matter of fact.
And for us, from our perspective, that is a catastrophe. It's a disability, a tragedy. We fear blindness above almost anything else.
But again, the speaker doesn't see it that way at all. They see it through this cold, clear lens of optimization. It's not a loss. It's a logical consequence of a new way of existence.
Vision has become superfluous.
Superfluous. And you have to think about the incredible biological cost of high-resolution sight. The hardware, the eyes themselves are complex. But the software, the huge portion of our brain's cortex that is dedicated purely to processing visual data, is incredibly energy intensive. It's one of the most expensive systems we run.
It's a premium feature designed for one main purpose. High-speed spatial navigation and threat detection from a distance.
Precisely. It lets you see the predator or the food source from far away while you're moving. If you permanently retire those functions, the system is smart enough to decommission the hardware. It's a biological optimization strategy. Reroute that energy to something that's now more important.
So the fixed state is this radical trade-off. You trade the utility of sight and memory for a liberation from all that expensive ballast.
You're trading a system built for quick processing, movement-based data for one built for deep, slow, chemically rich interaction.
And the argument is that the depth of that new interaction is so profound that it vastly outweighs the loss of the high-speed senses.
It completely reframes what we think of as a good sense. We just assume sight is the king of senses because it's fast and it covers distance. But the text forces you to see that the usefulness of any sense is totally dependent on your existential needs.
If mobility is gone, the senses that exist only to support mobility are just. They're waste. They're an inefficient use of energy.
And that's the really unsettling thought for us, for the listener, is our total reliance on sight and sound, these loud, fast, high bandwidth senses. Is it actually making us miss things? Is it an inefficiency?
What crucial data are we just drowning out with all this constant optical and acoustic noise?
It forces you to admit that our most valued senses are really just filters. They're the specific filters required by our kinetic high-speed existence, and by definition, they limit our access to other, maybe much richer dimensions of reality.
The speaker says other things have become important. Okay, let's talk about what those other things are, right? So when we, the mobile units, think about communication, it's all about optical or acoustic patterns. It's sight and sound.
Loud, fast, and visible.
Exactly. Our entire civilization is built on it. Words, which are sounds. Writing, which is visual. Gestures, traffic lights. It's all discrete units of information sent across a distance that we can see or hear.
But the fixed being, the convert, has moved into a completely different paradigm. Their communication happens entirely through the exchange of chemical compounds.
This is a shift from a language of waves, sound waves, light waves, to a language of concentrations, a molecular language.
It's silent. It's invisible to us, and that's why the mobile world assumes that silence means absence. A plant, to us, is mute.
But the convert, now on the inside of that system, describes this chemical exchange as enormously rich and incredibly complex. It's a constant, vibrant, layered conversation.
And then source material is very specific about where that complexity comes from. It says it arises from the vast number of possible combinations of different substances at different concentrations. We really need to break down what that molecular grammar means.
Okay, help us visualize that. If our language is built on, say, 26 letters that we can combine into a few 100,000 words, how does the chemical language compare? What are its letters and words?
Well, think about the huge chemical library that's available in any given patch of soil or root system. You have hormones, you have enzymes, you have defensive alkaloids, you have nutrients, waste products. Each one of those distinct chemical compounds could be seen as a letter or maybe a word.
Okay, so a huge alphabet.
A huge alphabet. But the complexity just explodes from there because it's not just about the presence or absence of the chemical. The concentration of that substance acts as the modulation. It's the nuance, the grammar, the punctuation.
So it's not just on or off.
No, it's a gradient. A low concentration of, say, compound A might be a signal for I am healthy and stable. A very high concentration of that same compound might scream, I am under severe stress. But then you combine that with a medium concentration of compound B and a trace amount of compound C, and the resulting signal, the sentence, could mean something incredibly specific, like, I am being attacked by this particular fungal pathogen from the east, and I need to activate this specific defensive enzyme in response.
So it's not a language of words, it's a language of chords. A symphony of shifting molecular gradients.
That's a perfect analogy. It's not linear and it's not binary like so much of our language is, yes, no, friend, foe, on, off.
Yeah.
This chemical language operates in subtle, continuous gradients, which means the potential information density is just exponentially higher than ours.
Well, it's much slower.
Much slower. It trades velocity for depth and complexity.
And the text is clear that this isn't a conversation the plant or the convert is having alone. It emphasizes the role of small and tiniest organisms that are constantly involved in the whole process.
Yes, the bacteria, the fungi, they aren't just bystanders. They are the network infrastructure. They're the fiber optic cables of this biological internet. They're the translators, the amplifiers, the messengers.
This sounds exactly like the real-world research that's come out in recent years, the stuff about the Wood Wide Web.
It maps onto it perfectly. The text is using a very accurate biological model, whether intentionally or not. The mycorrhizal networks that connect tree roots are the physical manifestation of this. They dramatically expand the reach and the capacity of this chemical communication network.
So the convert realizes they're not an isolated individual anymore. They might not be able to talk to the mobile world, but they're in a constant, deep, rich dialogue with their entire local ecosystem.
Which means the very idea of a self, a discrete individual, starts to dissolve. The mobile self is this thing contained inside its skin, navigating the world as a separate unit.
An agent.
An agent, yes. But the fixed self becomes this open, porous, integrated node. The boundary between me and my environment gets blurry. It dissolves into a shared, ongoing chemical conversation. Your identity becomes distributed, localized, and fundamentally symbiotic.
And realizing this, being a part of this is what triggers that moment of what the analysis calls epistemological humility.
Yes. The speaker looks back at their old self and just admits it. They vastly underestimated the richness of this world. They misjudged it completely because they were only looking at it from the outside, from the mobile perspective.
That's the core epistemological breach. The moment you realize your own senses, your own biology, have been fundamentally dictating and limiting your judgment of everything else.
Because they couldn't see the silent molecular conversation, they just assumed it wasn't happening. Or if it was, it had to be primitive.
It's the arrogance of the kinetic perspective, isn't it?
It is. It's the assumption that if communication isn't happening in our preferred bandwidth fast, loud, optical, acoustic, then it must be inferior or non-existent. The whole journey of the convert is about dismantling that arrogance one molecule at a time. They were judging this vast, complex information system based on a quick visual scan of its surface.
Assuming that what is visually still must also be intellectually static. That's a really harsh lesson for us. As this conversion goes deeper, it feels like it becomes irreversible. It starts to hit the very core of identity. The speaker talks about this slow, inevitable fading of their memories of their old life, the mobile existence.
It's maybe the most poignant and also the most terrifying part of the text. This fear the speaker expresses that it's not possible to live as one version while retaining the memories of the other.
The two realities are just. They're
Yeah.
mutually exclusive. You can't run both operating systems at the same time.
And we understand why, based on what we've just discussed. The mobile self requires that massive memory apparatus for pathfinding, for prediction, for survival. The fixed self, which is defined by this deep presence and integration, finds that same memory to be useless ballast.
So to fully embrace the new identity, you have to completely uninstall the cognitive architecture of the old one.
The old self, the person who moved and spoke and remembered, becomes not just irrelevant, but actually unknowable. The speaker says their previous world, as a mobile unit, will have ceased to exist for them.
So identity isn't some fixed, essential thing we carry around. It's fluid. It's strictly bound to our current biological state.
You are what your biology allows you to perceive and process in that moment. Change the biology, you change the self. Utterly.
This creates such a painful gap, an asymmetry of understanding between the convert and the world they left behind. To the mobile unit still running around, the convert is now just an object.
Simply an immobile object, yes. A thing of little significance and not especially noteworthy.
It's heartbreaking. It highlights the total failure of the mobile perspective to value any existence that isn't defined by movement and visible action.
The mobile world judges worth based on doing. On speed, on competitive action. And since the convert can't even move the slightest bit, they're dismissed. They're demoted from a fellow being to just part of the landscape.
There's such a deep melancholy there. This being achieves this incredible inner complexity, his profound connection to a hidden world. But in doing so, they lose the ability to communicate any of it to the ones they left behind.
The empathy gap is biologically determined. The mobile world literally cannot perceive the complex reality of the fixed world. Their senses are fine-tuned to detect motion and ignore the static. They are biologically programmed to overlook it.
And this tragic failure to bridge that gap, it leads to the text's ultimate philosophical thesis. The crux of the whole thing. It's a pretty damning statement. In the end, we are slaves to our biology, which determines what kind of world we live in.
That is the core takeaway. And it's so powerful because it doesn't just apply to the convert, it applies to us. We, the kinetic beings, are just as imprisoned. We are slaves to our need for movement and the senses that support it.
Our biology isn't the key to freedom. It's just a very specific and very limiting operating system.
Since all our sensory data, everything we see, hear, and feel is, as the text says, inseparable from their mobility, we can only experience the world through that one specific lens. The lens of a navigator, a traveler.
Which is why we build the world we do. Roads, cities, supply chains. It's all an externalization of our high-maintenance mobile biology.
And from this new perspective, the speaker looks back at the mobile beings, at us, and finds them almost a bit pitiable.
Pitiable. Because we're trapped.
Because we're trapped in this single, incredibly demanding mode of existence. We are forced to constantly process movement-related data, forever unable to perceive the deep, rich, fixed reality that is happening literally right under our feet. We're slaves to motion.
But hold on, couldn't you argue the fixed state is just another prison? A more efficient one, maybe, but still a prison. They've traded the prison of constant effort for the prison of being completely dependent on one single spot of Earth.
That's a really important question, and I think the text addresses it subtly. It's about integration versus competition. The mobile unit is a slave to effort and competition over resources across space.
Right.
The fixed unit is a slave to place and integration. But by fully integrating, they largely eliminate the need for competition. They trade self-sufficiency for symbiosis. The energy cost of their existence plummets, and the complexity of their inner world explodes. It's a trade-off between two different kinds of bondage, maybe, but one seems to lead to a much richer inner life.
And yet, despite gaining access to this profound new reality, the speaker is careful not to become arrogant. They maintain this rigorous humility.
They do. They emphasize that they have seen a side of reality, not the other side. They call that latter claim presumptuous.
Which is the perfect philosophical ending, really. It avoids the trap of simply replacing one form of arrogance with another.
Exactly. The final point isn't, my new reality is better than your old one.
Yeah.
The point is that reality itself is not some single absolute thing. There isn't one universal truth to be discovered. There are countless legitimate worlds, countless sides, each one incredibly rich and complex within its own biological context.
So the text is the ultimate caution against assuming that our specific kind of intelligence, human intelligence, with its speed and its language and its vision, is the pinnacle of anything.
It's just one highly optimized operating system among many, a very effective one for a kinetic lifestyle, but an operating system nonetheless. Hashtag out UTRO.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into If I Were a Plant has been, a radical reframing of some very fundamental concepts. Life, intelligence, complexity really does force you to confront your own biological limitations.
It does.
Let's just quickly recap the major contrasts this text lays out. We see the shift from movement, which is the source of constant Aufwand or effort, to rootedness, which brings Gelassenheit, or composure.
We see the senses shift from high-energy vision and sound to this low-frequency but incredibly high-density chemical communication.
And we see the very function of the mind shift, from relying on memory as a critical tool for pathfinding to a state of deep presence, of integrated symbiotic existence.
And I think the real aha moment here for anyone listening and absorbing this is that you realize this text is a profound challenge to all of our anthropocentric assumptions.
Our human first view of the world.
Right. It makes you ask how much of what we call intelligence, how much of our value system is just a direct byproduct of our specific high-maintenance biology, our need to move fast, see far, and speak loudly.
By flipping the biology, the text shows that these things we dismiss as simple objects, as insignificant background scenery, might be engaged in a reality of immense unseen complexity, a constant vital dialogue.
The speaker's conversion reveals just how much we are vastly underestimating all around us, simply because it operates outside our very narrow, high-speed sensory bandwidth.
So at the end of the day, the text is a powerful plea for what you called epistemological modesty, for a genuine openness to the other, whether that other is another person, another species, or just a completely different way of being.
It's an admission that we only see the world through the very specific, very demanding kinetic lens of our own biology.
And we're left with this unsettling reality that the very speed and power of our senses might be what's making us deaf and blind to the profound, subtle richness of the world that just stays put. Which brings us to a final provocative thought for you to take away from this. If our reality is so completely shaped and limited by our biology, what sensory or cognitive input are we currently missing entirely? What form of communication, as rich and complex as that chemical signaling, is happening all around us that we're simply not built to perceive?
And what would we have to give up to gain access to it?
What critical function, what cherished ability like memory or mobility would we have to shed to tune into that new, invisible reality?
What world exists that we are just too busy moving and too busy remembering the journey to ever even notice?
Think on that, and we'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.